to that and make it much more inclusive. The reason we wanted these regular meetings is that I think there's an echo on the line. If someone's got their is that we want to actually get things done. And I'm a firm believer of regular, quick, efficient meetings to actually solicit from all of you what you want us, myself and Kuba, to do on behalf of InterManager. And if we have initiatives, that we can actually drive these initiatives forward so that we build up a momentum. We also didn't want these meetings to be overly formal. We wanted it to be much more off-piste, freewheeling and informal, so that people don't feel in any way intimidated or inhibited from making comments. And finally, each week, because we want to recognize the importance of our associate members, each week we wanted to, or each meeting we wanted to have a presentation from an associate member who wants to present their company or their product, which should be of interest to all of us as members of this association. And that presentation doesn't need to fall within the 1 hour guillotine. If people find it interesting, they can stay on and hear it to the end. If it does overrun, for those of you who have other things to do, then you can check out and leave the meeting without causing any offense or without showing any offense or disrespect. So guillotine of 1 hour, very much to get this momentum going. We've got a number of key issues, I think, that we want to drive through now. We need all of your help and valued assistance to do that, and all of your ideas, because this is an inclusive association. And I think the more inclusive we make it, the more buy-in we will get, and the more associate members and full members we will attract, and more of that to come. That's all, Kuba.
Thank you, Mike. Just a few housekeeping rules. Those who join, please make sure that you are muted, at least the microphone, so we don't get the feedback. This is being recorded for those of you who cannot stay with us or would like to share this meeting with your colleagues in the office. I will sort out how we are going to share this with you. I'm having all sorts of IT issues at the moment with Teams, but hopefully I will advise all of you where the recording is being held. And now, obviously, if you want to speak, you would like to make a comment, you put hand up. There is on the top little hand, like that. Or you can wave at me as well, but I don't say that I'm seeing everybody. So yellow hand would help. And if you would like to make a comment as well, you use the chat box. I will be monitoring all the time. David, over to you. Easy C.
Yeah, thank you, Kuba. IC initiative. This is a marine pollution geotagging technology developed by Chartworld and founded by Graham Summerfield Ryan. It's moving along at a pace now. The organisation's formally been registered in New Zealand as a charity. There's a board of directors also assigned. The first chairman is Ignace van Meenen of MPC Capital. And we have an expanding volunteer fleet who are performing the trial for the technology. And so far, over 10 committed shipping companies who will join as membership once we have the bank accounts set up, which is taking a little bit of time. The membership fee has been decided at $5,000 per year. But if you want to contribute, you don't have to actually be a member. You just have to make a commitment to provide some resources and facilities. The rollout of the technology of the beta version on the ships is going very well. There's a lot of interest from the crew. We have our first seafarer ambassadors assigned, and they want to be very clearly more active in the program. There are already heat maps being developed from the photographs that have been put into the system, and it's showing some very interesting hotspots for pollution accumulations as well as pollution starting points. We have already signed an MOU with the North American Marine Environmental Protection Association. That's formally signed and agreed, and we're working now with similar MOUs with the other MEPAs around the world. There's also an MOU signed with the Western Australia's largest fishing organisation, representing 500 boats. So this initiative isn't only designed to include merchant seafarers, but also recreational seagoing people, and also people who walk around the coast can utilize the application as well. There are also now early discussions with IBM in terms of broadening the functionality of the application, and having a strong technology partner like that will be important going forward. And there is an expanded community volunteer network of IC members, ambassadors, and volunteers in over 10 countries, ranging from South Africa, Chile, Canada, UK, New Zealand, Greece, Singapore, Netherlands, to name a few. And there will be a growing band of volunteers that will be contributing to the data accumulation. And of course, the substance of the value of the initiative is really to get more data that will allow us to have meaningful objective evidence to, let's say, pressurize organizations and countries and port authorities to effect cleanup, and also prevent the garbage going into sea in the first place. And on that point, we are in discussion with a Mumbai-based cleanup organization, activist, who has information of accumulation of garbage in that area, and we're now working on a way of actually effecting a physical cleanup of that garbage to show tangible results. So it's not only about identifying where the garbage is, where it's coming from, but also what we're doing to remove it. All I can say is I think it's a wonderful initiative. The more people that support it, then the more beneficial it's going to be for the world as a whole. I think it's, from the shipping perspective, it shows that we are self-regulating. If we contribute, we're not being forced to do something because legislation has decided we're at fault. And also we can demonstrate to the world that actually the marine pollution isn't caused by ships. It's not ships creating this, it's other areas of garbage distribution. And we can also demonstrate that we meaningfully want to contribute to the cleanup process. So that's the status in a nutshell. I'm quite happy to take any questions you may have.
David, I'm unmuting myself, and I would like to thank you very much for taking this initiative, bringing it to us. I suggest next step would be then myself, we will send a message with details of this program to all members. Now, guys, you are primed. You know what's coming towards you. You're not forced to participate. It's a great initiative. We will be running with it. And I believe we need to think about signing memorandum of understanding or cooperation with IC and as an InterManager, as an organization. Obviously, we need to judge appetite from our members, whether we are all happy or is it just very few who would be joining. I don't see any hands up when I was talking, so I believe people are happy with the course of action. David, would you like to comment on what I'm saying?
As a first step, it would be worth considering whether we as an organization want to join an MOU arrangement, because one of the benefits of an MOU arrangement is the individual memberships have an advantage on the membership fee, so you get a discounted rate as well.
Definitely, that's, I believe, what InterManager is all about. Absolutely, thank you. Not seeing any urgent questions, then I would like to say thank you, David. Brilliant. And moving on to Mark.
Sorry, Kuba, can I just suggest, you know that Kath Robertshaw, who's the CEO of IC, is based in the Isle of Man. You're now back in the Isle of Man. Maybe three of us should get together and have a meeting quite soon to thrash out ideas of how we can actually be meaningfully contributing.
That's correct, sir. Yes, I would love to do that, especially then there are some other groups which would like to join, and they are asking me already because they know what you have been doing. Yes, we'll take it outside of this meeting and set up and then report back to the InterManager group.
Okay, great, thanks.
David, can I ask, and I should have said this in the introduction, can I ask that you circulate to the membership a note or a proposal on this, just sort of fleshing out a little bit more? Of course, you've done a great job in 5 minutes of giving us information, but I think it would be useful. And I think this comes on to what I should have said at the introduction. The purpose of these meetings is also for all of us, particularly the larger managers, to use this as a forum for information sharing. So if we have a particular initiative like this, or we've done a particular study, that it is not in any way going to detract from our competitiveness, but is of industry-wide interest, then we should throw it into the collective pot and allow the smaller members to benefit from that. I mean, I think that's the whole benefit of being part of an association. So, you know, you should blaze the trail to the extent that this is not the first time, but, you know, we certainly, as far as CSM are concerned, of a number of studies, I think, which would be of interest to the membership, and we'll certainly follow suit.
Yep, I'll do that. No problem.
Okay, moving on to another agenda item. Mark, industry standard developed in order to better represent ship and crew managers. Please go ahead.
Yeah, we had this discussion during the last execcomm meeting. Let me give you the background to where I'm coming from, and this was part of my manifesto, and really I was only interested in the honor of the presidency insofar as we could achieve something really tangible in this regard. When I joined ship management from my previous career as a lawyer, I was amazed by the low perception with which the industry is regarded in the overall shipping and commodity and transport sector. There is a cutthroat nature, there is a cowboy element regard of ship management, quite unjustifiably for the most part, and this really comes down to the fact that we're not regulated. Anybody can set up business as a ship manager, particularly with bulkers or low, should I say, low skill management element required, and operate. And I drew an analogy with, I come from my family's business was in the security guarding business in the UK, where my father set up a security company, ran it very successfully, but there was no association of security guarding in the UK, and as a result, the industry drove its prices down in a very cutthroat nature, competing for the business. And with the prices, of course, went the level of service and went the level of regard. In the end, he succeeded in having an association and an industry standard imposed that wasn't prescriptive or in any way onerous, but was a general principle based and very much aspirational and inclusive. And as a result, not that security guarding is viewed much better now, but it certainly can hold its head up higher and has to ascribe to certain minimum basic standards which their contractual partners know they are getting. And it certainly helped businesses, all sizes of businesses in the security industry, whether they're the big boys or the small boys, which of course leads to the richness of the particular sector. So too then with InterManager. And I really do think we need to address this, and will be for all of our benefits. If we don't, if we carry on in this cutthroat nature, at the end of the day, in the not too distant future, I foresee an industry landscape where you will have between 1 and 5 of the very big boys operating huge economies of scale on a very industrial basis, the service on a very industrial basis, without the ability to tailor services, without the broad spectrum of quality which the clients demand. And I think that the industry or the sector will be the poorer for it if that's the ultimate position. We need the big boys, and girls, and we need the middle ranking companies, and we certainly need the small companies as well to afford the full range. So one of my first priorities, if I have your buy-in, and it is the association decision, is to establish an industry standard that is inclusive. So there isn't a bar, or there is a bar set, but it will be an inclusive approach, and will recognize aspiration as well as achievement. It will be audited in the sense that the association will look at its members and see whether they are demonstrating the aspiration to achieve that standard and what steps they're taking towards it. It shouldn't be a standard which compares itself to RightShip or TMSA or any of the other codified prescriptive standards, but it should be, as I said, a standard of general principles whereby, for example, we say that all of our members subscribe to worthy causes such as MACN, the anti-corruption, or the Neptune Declaration, or TMSA 3, but that these standards are achievable by the larger companies and by the smaller companies. So it can be quite a simple process at the start without, as I said, trying to exclude anyone, and it should be a living standard so that as the industry develops, as the sector develops, so the standard is able to be flexible and go with particular developments as we see. I think in the end, if we achieve this and keep it simple, we will end up with a right ship type standard, but much more user-friendly, much more, as I said, inclusive, which will be for the benefit of the industry, and it will be for the benefit of the individual members, because clients will know if you are a member of InterManager, then you subscribe or you aspire to the very basic standards and the very basic principles. Now, when we look at our membership, again, I was surprised that some of the largest managers are not members of InterManager. And I've been doing my homework and ringing around some of these larger managers and asking them why they're not members. And the overriding response is that what is it all for? Why are we going to be joining InterManager when we're part of Intertanko, we're part of BIMCO, we're part of this, we're part of that. What do we actually gain for it? And when I talked about our aspiration or potential aspiration of setting a standard, apart from the comment, well, we've been there before and we've tried to do it, but it all got too complicated. The overriding response was, if we achieve that, and if we do that, then they're in. And I've had discussions with Synergy, with OSM, with Wallem, and with Marlowe. I believe we can, those are the first round. I believe that they will join and they will be party to this process, because the very simple reason, if they're not, then they've got to explain why they wouldn't possibly want to be part of such a noble ideal as raising standards across the industry, and particularly when the large commodity trading houses and the oil majors, and we will be visiting them to solicit their opinions, require this. You can bet your bottom dollar that everyone will want to join us for all the right reasons. So I think we need to take a hard decision on this and really look ourselves in the mirror and decide what we want to be. Is it just a pleasant chat forum, or are we going to introduce some sector rigor and have, as I said, this inclusive standard? I, for my part, believe that if we do that, we will have all of the large managers and those smaller, medium-sized who are not members joining. And also, we will be much more attractive to associate members who will see all of the managers as part of this, and quite rightly, quite justifiably, will be wanting to be part of this association to have access and use the networking opportunities that come from that. So I think it's an industry need, it's an industry sector need, but it's also an association need that we go forward with this standard. But I think it needs to be inclusive. We need to set up a committee. That committee needs to be small, dynamic, and flexible, and reflect all of the interests of the association. There will be probably one of the quid pro quos of inviting some of those that aren't members back into the membership is they will want to be part of this standard. Of course they will, to ensure that it doesn't in any way damage their interests. But I think it's the right way to go, and I think we should do it, and I think we should do it in the next and aim to have it done in the next 6 months, and we should go out at the end of March, as Kuba and I discussed, with a PR campaign saying that's exactly what we are doing, and that everyone who's not members should get back and be members, so that we really do raise the standard of this industry to where it should be. That's all I really wanted to say about it, Kuba.
Mark, thank you. I think you need a sip of water now. You've been talking for 9 minutes. And you combined 2 items. Thank you very much, number 3 and 4. So you gave us a roundup how far you went with going around. So It's very refreshing for me. And Dirk, I see your hand in a second. Thank you. It's very refreshing to see the President taking such a positive and active role now. And I can only, as a Secretary General, appeal to you guys, join Mark in this. I am here to help and assist. And Dirk, you would like to say something? You are muted at the moment. Okay, go ahead, Dirk. Still muted?
Yes, I'm fully in favor of such an initiative. I know we have been trying in the past, we never achieved it. And when we go very much back in the past, we were our own worst enemy by prescribing too strict measures to achieve this standard. So yes, I'm all for it, but as they say, follow the KISS principle. Keep it simple, sailor. Thank you.
Indeed, Dirk, thank you. And as Mark suggested, I will be going back to you all, asking to think whether you can contribute yourself or somebody from your organization to join the committee. And definitely KISS principle. Otherwise, we will be the biggest enemy of ourselves.
Can I just give Kuba, can I just give a little bit of guidance, the way I see it? It should be general principles. It should be that all InterManager members support and ascribe to anti-corruption, MACN. It should be that we support and ascribe to anti-slavery measures. It should be that there is amongst us members, there is an understanding and an agreement that there should be a reasonable management fee charged for management of vessels. What we're seeing in this industry, and we see all too often in pictures, is ridiculously low management fees and incomes being achieved around the back via the back doors, which may win the pitch, but actually drives the possibility for the smaller managers to earn a decent living, and actually drives the standards down of the overall industry, because the next pitch that happens the start point will be that ridiculously low fee that was put forward in that pitch. So this is not cartel. This is just a simple, broad principle that there should be a reasonable management fee charged for the service of management. That we all ascribe to principles such as transparency, etc. This is pretty simple stuff, and it's inclusive. And if we all ascribe to, and there are teeth, so if we hear that one of our members has gone forward with a pitch and adopted a strategy or a practice which is contrary to these broad principles, there should be a reprimand expected. And I think if we do that, there have to be teeth, not necessarily sharp teeth, but there has to be some form of sanction or reprimand that we all realise that we will be called out if we adopt these practices. Then I think it's going to be something that we can all benefit from.
Okay, Mark, thank you. I do not see any hand up anymore. Okay, then I shall move to another item. Thank you. Obviously, there will be a follow-up in this in minutes or sort of action points from this meeting. So you will have a roundup of this. Now, moving to another item, which is my part, Industry Vaccination Task Force. I'm hoping that you are receiving my messages every Friday after the meeting. Meeting is usually on Thursday, 10 o'clock UK time. Industry got together. Actually, industry got together on the 27th of March last year when we created the COVID task force. But as a result of the progress with vaccination, InterManager suggested that we create a subgroup called Vaccination Task Force. And we had 6 meetings so far. The interesting part is that we are cooperating very closely with air industry, obviously IMO, ILO, WHO, European Commission. All these parties are part of the meeting task force, and we are able, as a shipping industry, able to voice our concerns. Very recently, I received a very good message from one of our members. A member went out to the seafarers, they own ships, and came back with 18 questions from the seafarers and concerns. This allows me to go back to the task force and show them what are we concerned about. We had some very good feedback from ship management companies as well. And very recently, I have circulated a legal paper prepared by owners, but I was concerned that some of those some of the wording there might be damaging for the ship managers. I am receiving feedback from you guys now, and I will be able to feed this back to the ICS and represent the ship manager's position. I have to say that not many controversies there. That seemed to be a very rounded paper. Having said that, some feedback was very good, very interesting. And especially, we need to remember that we are representing crew managers as much as we are representing technical managers, ship managers. So I encourage you guys to look through your lenses of crew managers and seeing whether there is any contradiction or any potential problems. And this is what we do. Now, regarding vaccination, there is another issue going on at the moment. Obviously, we realize that educational part of vaccination process is very important. And that's what we are working with one of the members for the benefit of all members, trying to figure out how we can create a short video, informative and down to earth, speaking plain English. I am waiting for the document which task force is preparing. Hopefully tomorrow I should have the 8 pages document dealing with vaccination of seafarers, trying to answer questions which we have seen already. How to vaccinate, who is going to vaccinate, who is going to pay, what are the pitfalls, and so on and so forth. So I would encourage you to actually participate in feedback. Every time you see my message, I am trying to woe you into asking you questions, but without your feedback, this initiative is dead. Remember, I am representing you. Therefore, please give me ammunition so I can defend our position or initiate our position or something. So that's all from me, and I can see Ral is already asking a question, I think. Ral, am I right saying that? When I was talking, I saw your hand up, I believe.
Yeah, it was just to sort of say that, you know, you and I had a little chat about this a little while ago, and I've been keeping a watching brief and various groups that I'm part of, and I'm just wanted to sort of throw a hat in the ring to help, you know, from the point of view, you mentioned a video, and we did something early on in the crisis last year to make a free resource then. And, you know, very happy to sort of to look at it. I mean, we have been, the problem, of course, with the whole picture has been so volatile, and it's been a very mixed thing regionally. So it's been hard to think about how we could kind of make something in the way of guidance to put out there in a video format. But if we feel that there is consolidation and that there is something that we could do of that nature, then please do let us know, and we'll see if we can help out.
I'll definitely pass this on to our committee working on it, and yes, definitely. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, and could you put your hand down, Ral, because it will confuse me next time? Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions on this particular issue? We are doing very well, guys. You know that I'm very
Kuba,
strict with.
Can I
yes,
jump in? Can I jump in on? It's not the specific issue. It's the principle, I guess. We need to direct Kuba more. And this part of these meetings as well, because he is at the end of the day an instrument of this association, and it may be that some of the things he does in the best belief that he is fulfilling our expectations, we don't actually want him to do or need him to do. So I do think these meetings should also at the end, in this sort of general discussion, should give Kuba clear directives of how he should best use his time. On that communication point, I do think also each of us needs to establish a point of contact within our organizations. Mine's easy. It's Dirk sitting there. For Kuba to direct communication to disseminate within our organizations. I think we're failing as an association to get through sometimes to our organizations. So InterManager is this thing that people have a vague awareness of. Kuba fires off his emails to all and sundry, and we're just not sure sometimes they get to the people that they should do, so that the feedback is given back. So please, can we encourage everybody, depending on the size of your organization, to have a point of contact who is then, as Dirk is invaluable for me, who will then fire off Kuba's questions and missives to the various right people within the organization. And the final point, again, on communication is where these meetings are recorded. If you miss one, you can always see it at your leisure, and also other people within your organization can see it in your leisure. And that was the whole purpose of having them recorded, so that if we have to cry off early for whatever reason or can't make it, then it's there to be caught up with at your leisure.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you. Okay, not seeing any more hands up. Christian, you are 8 minutes ahead of the schedule. I hope I got you. I can see your face smiling. So Christian, over to you, and you will be sharing your screen, I believe. You are muted at the moment, Christian. Okay.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Kieran. Thank you very much for the invite, everybody. My name is Christian, and I am CEO of Mental Health Support Solutions. And I'm going to give you a quick talk today just about mental health in shipping, how it relates to safety, and how we all have obligations going forward. So let me just get up on screen my presentation. So I'm going to be talking about three things today. First of all, why mental health is now a safety issue for everybody at the top and at the bottom of the supply chain. Secondly, an introduction to ourselves and what we do and how we facilitate that. And then thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, the actions which we can all take today, we should take today, and we should encourage other people to take. So, the first question is mental health as important as physical health today? And we say, absolutely. I don't think it's controversial that even the World Health Organization recognizes that you cannot be mentally healthy unless you're physically healthy, and vice versa. And in the shipping industry and the logistics industry generally, there are so many obligations which people and companies have to meet in respect of physical health. And today we think the same is true of mental health, and that going forward, everybody needs to have in place a support system and a structure so that when somebody asks, is your approach to mental health the same as physical health, people can say yes. Now, lots of people say, well, we have mental health support in place, or we recognize its importance, but we do what we have to, but nothing more. And I think that actually today we need to exercise proactivity. So people should have in place not just a support system and a network, but that they should actually make sure everybody understands how that works. It should be implemented at all levels of the company, and it should be actively monitored. Now, one of the questions is, well, I'm a small part of the supply chain. I supply materials to a bigger operator. Do I have rights and responsibilities in respect of mental health? And I think the answer to that is yes. Everybody within the supply chain, from owners, managers, customers and suppliers, they all take collective responsibility for the mental health of those involved in their organization, but also outside of that. And the reason for that is, to my mind, pretty clear. If an incident or an accident happens and mental health is raised as an issue, a potential cause, the spotlight suddenly then goes on to everybody, each of those players, to understand what their approach is. And everybody's expected to say, yes, we have a proactive support system in place. But anybody who doesn't do that, suddenly they are singled out for responsibility, and they have questions to answer and potential liability. What then are the consequences of not having a proper mental health support system and process in place? Well, I've put down here a few which we see from what we do on a day-to-day basis. The first is the risk and the liability aspect. Now, I guess for ship owners and operators, the biggest risk here is a finding that your vessel is unseaworthy. And I think it's fair to say that if you don't have a mental health approach on board your vessels and within your organisation, it's very difficult to say that a vessel can be safe and it can be seaworthy. Of course, once an allegation of unseaworthiness is made, people have to then disprove it. The burden is upon them. But also at the other end of the spectrum of the suppliers who are providing to the maritime industry, if an incident happens and say it's a faulty part and there's a mental health element associated with that, say the production line was inefficient because somebody suffered anxiety and inability to speak up on that particular mental health issue, suddenly the spotlight is put upon that supplier. They have to explain what process and what procedures they have in place, and ultimately, if they don't have adequate mental health protection to protect them and to protect the resilience of the supply chain, that is going to punch through a lot of the protections they might have in their contract. So suddenly we can see that not having mental health opens up a whole wide field of potential liability. Reputational damage, I think a good comparison to draw is probably anti-bribery and corruption, sanctions compliance. Any company which doesn't have this in place is going to be asked the reasonable question, why don't you have it? Is there a good reason, given it's so widely available and given the cost is minimal compared to the benefit it brings, what is the good reason for doing that? And I think, especially when we look at the resilience of the supply chain and we look for trust in our partners, are they financially secure? Do they have policies, procedures and principles in place? Then the damage to a reputation of a company of not having that in place can be immense and very difficult to repair. Then, of course, financial loss. So then, one of the questions we get asked a lot is we say, well, okay, mental health is incredibly important, but am I putting money into something and effort into something which brings a very limited reward? And from our experience, from what we see, that's absolutely not the case. If you invest properly, time, energy, positivity, the rewards you will gain as an organisation are absolutely incredible. So just by investing in a proactive approach to mental health and encouraging people to be aware of the issues, the support network, and speak up and voice their concerns or voice their opinions, you can see an improved safety record. So minor, low-level incidences which are caused by, for example, a lack of confidence to question decisions suddenly start seeing themselves being diminished. There's research which is widely available talking about the financial return on investment in investing properly in mental health. And that's interesting because it says, look, if you take a very lackadaisical approach to mental health, if you put something in place but don't really engage with it, you won't really see a return. If, however, you implement an organisation-wide approach with proper monitoring, implementation, then you will see between a 4 and a 7 ROI return. Now, I'll talk about a couple of examples we've had recently where we're actively seeing that. And I think it's fair to say that we're seeing that mental health isn't just a cost centre anymore. If you invest in it properly, then it really becomes a figure on your bottom line. And then finally, and probably the most important part, is the human element, the cultural element. A proper investment and an approach to mental health and safety brings engaged employees who recognise incidents before they happen, a proactivity in finding alternative ways of doing things, optimizations, which unless you have that support network in place and encourage people to think and to question and really engage with their mental health, you wouldn't otherwise see. So I think, the summary on that part is that in 2021, it's an obligation, it's a legal and regulatory obligation for companies to engage with professional mental health. But when proactive and forward-thinking companies take a step back, they'll see the other benefits associated with this. And I think 2021 is definitely going to be the year when we see a huge increase and a huge impetus towards that positive approach. So you're probably looking at me thinking, well, who is Christian? Why is he here? So please let me just give a brief background about mental health support solutions. I joined in December as the CEO, and our mission is a simple one, that in 2021, every company and every member of staff has access to professional mental health support. Now, that's important because we're currently riding the crest of a wave where mental health is a significant issue. And it's very refreshing to speak with an organisation like yourselves who are taking such a proactive approach in other areas. And it's very forward-thinking approaches like these which are going to create that change. Our team is unique insofar as we are all, apart from me, professional psychologists. So everything we say, we do, we talk about comes from our years of practical experience, both in clinics, but also on board vessels. And what's really interesting and unique about what we do is that our psychologists spend time on board vessels. They sail with them. They spend time on shore within the organisation itself, talking to captains, talking to ratings in different languages. And so they really understand not just the psychology behind it, but also the relationships, the stresses, the strains of sailing, not sailing, and all that sort of complex relationship. Our approach is one where we want to make mental health accessible. So we are happy to do the firefighting when an incident arises, but we have to take a long-term and a holistic approach as well. And that really is designed to create what I call mental hygiene, where mental health is a normal part of everyday life. Somebody wakes up, they practice mental health in themselves and others. It doesn't become an awkward conversation or something which is a little bit strange and which we shy away from, but something which is part and parcel of everything we do. So mental health support solutions, we create trainings, long forms and short forms and webinars, and these are very much designed to speak to the issues which people are facing. So again, they come from our experience on board and talking with the various people. And what we often do is break these down into short video-sized trainings. So in the bottom right, there's a picture of Sophia, one of our German-speaking consultants. She's produced a series of videos about distress and how to deal with those, because we recognise that not everybody at sea or onshore or in the supply chain has time to watch a half-day seminar. Some people prefer to understand bits of information, store it, and then when they need it, now, in the future, in a year's time, it's easy, it's available, and they can deploy it actively. We also operate a 24/7 crisis line. Now, that is direct access to a professional multilingual psychologist. Really important, it's confidential. And that gives people who use it a lot of confidence and a lot of trust in it and encourages them to engage. What we find, what is startling is that we're seeing people using it not just for themselves, but also in respect of other people. So a master might ring up and say, hey, I'm worried about my chief mate. He's displaying this symptom, this symptom. It's a direct access to one of our psychologists who will assess, support, treat where possible, and make sure that from start to finish, there is a resolution. And from that, we take a lot of information. What are the current trends? What are the current issues being faced? So yes, it is a crisis support line, but it's also a really good insight for the user into the issues facing them and facing companies. Now, one of the questions always is, well, how many people actually use this? And we say, well, the value is in the support. The fact that a company has this and seafarers or shore staff have access to this actually provides a lot of comfort. And it goes a long way to providing to the outside world evidence that you're taking a proactive approach to mental health. Because you can say, look, an incident might happen, but this support system is in place. It's being rolled out properly. People are aware of it. Unfortunately, incidents do happen, but it's an exception rather than inevitability if it wasn't there in place. And also, as I say, we're seeing a lot of interactions on different issues. And we're able to take from that trends in the industry, feed them back, and create trainings and help partners reduce or prevent those issues before they crystallize into a reality. On-site interventions is something else we do, and we visit vessels, we visit offices and the scenes where something has happened to administer what we call psychological first aid. For us, it's really important that somebody who's been witness to an accident or incident receives that treatment as soon as possible, because PTSD can take between 1 and 6 months to appear in somebody. And it's very important for the person engaging us or the company that we tell them, yes, this person is suitable to return to work, or no, they need further treatment or they need further assistance. Why? If an incident later happens and it transpires they didn't receive that, or they hadn't been told it was safe, then again, it goes back to liability and what is the company doing proactively for the mental health of its staff. And then we also do more corporate work, so audits, policy reviews, and stress testing. I often receive calls from people saying, look, this is what we have in place. In light of the current circumstances, are our processes proper? Will they stand scrutiny from the outside world? Is there anything we can improve or anything we can develop? So, in summary, we recognise that mental health is an issue. We're experts and professionals in that area, and we want to make it as accessible to everybody. There should be no excuse for people not to have access to it, and there should be no excuse for people not having not only access, but consumption of the information. And that's why you can see on the right-hand side, we've created a book series. Now, for us, what we want is for people to have access to information on mental health, not just in e-learning form, which is equally important, but also something tangible and physical. And we're seeing a lot of companies will get copies of this book and create it as part of their joining package or their onboarding process for staff. And it's a very easy, simple way to talk about the messages and, importantly, to provide that help and that support for people when they most need it. I wanted just to quickly go through a few recent highlights, because you might be thinking, this sounds great, but in practice, what happens? So first of all, our managing consultant came back last week from a week on board a drilling vessel, where one of the seafarers or one of the contractors had suffered a fatal injury, had been witnessed by a lot of people. They were obviously in a state of distress, in a state of shock. We administered psychological first aid, and were also able to produce a really insightful report into the status of mental health and well-being on board that vessel, which the client is now using to create a further program and a deep dive analysis as to mental health is practiced at a corporate level, but how is it practiced on board vessels and how can we improve that? The second point is the 24/7 hotline. We received a call 2 weeks ago from a master whose chief engineer was in a state of serious distress, wasn't able to function, and was potentially at risk of serious injury. Our Russian-speaking psychologist managed to assess the situation, stabilize his condition, and restore him to working functionality, meaning that the vessel could continue its voyage, discharge the engineer in the next port, which was on its schedule. And obviously, the main positive there is that somebody's life was potentially saved. For an owner, operator, and everybody else in the supply chain, there was no deviation, significant costs hadn't been incurred, been prevented, been avoided. And when we talk about financials, the payback for the client there had been realized in literally less than a day and would have self-sustained it for the next few years. Psychological testing, something which is really important. We're introducing this because whilst we test physical competence, it's actually quite underused that we test psychological competence. And we say today that there's no excuse for not doing that. And by doing that, it won't tell you if somebody is competent or incompetent, but it will tell you in less than 1 hour and online how best to optimize them. What tasks are they suitable to perform, with whom should they be crewed, how will they react in certain crisis situations. And again, it costs very little to run. It can be done very efficiently and combined with like pre-medicals and other items, but it's something which when somebody from the outside looks in, they're going to say, well, an incident happened. How did you take steps from the start to try and prevent this? And if you have psychological training or psychological evaluation, it's a lot easier to say, yes, it happened, but we were aware of this person's credentials before, and this is an incident which is unexpected. It couldn't have been recognised, and therefore it's unfortunate, but that's where it is. And finally, I guess what we do is assisting office staff in trend identification. It's a really interesting point about how the world has developed, and now we work in shipping, logistics, but we're seeing a lot of interaction with office staff, management reorganisations, welfare issues, and burnout. And so we're providing a lot of counselling, consulting services, again, on the immediate part, but also in the long term. How do we create a feeling of wellness? How do we give people practical information and techniques which they can then use and deploy on a day-to-day basis, both in themselves and in others? So, in short, we create a tailored approach. It's very quickly implemented, but the effects can be massive and very quickly realized. Now, my conclusions, what I wanted to take to you today is, first of all, please feel free to reach out. We're here to guide you. Mental health is changing. It's not a fixed position, and every week, every month, we're seeing different initiatives and actions. I am very happy to talk with anybody who says, look, we want a mental health program. Is there anything you can suggest? Or somebody who says, look, we have this in place. What do you think? Objectively, is there anything we can do or shouldn't do? I think what I would like everybody to do today is ask questions about your organisation. Is the approach to mental health proactive and tailored? If yes, that's great. But I suspect that a lot of people might have support in place or no support, which people either don't understand or don't know about. It's really important that your staff know about the support available and they're able to reach it in a time of crisis or time of emergency, because frankly, when that support is required, it's not a slow burn, it's often very instantaneous. And thirdly, I guess implement. Mental health is something which it takes a long time to properly put into place, but there are some very quick and easy wins which can be put in. A 24/7 crisis line, for example, is something which can be put in place in hours, but the benefits can be realised almost instantaneously. Somebody looking from the outside in will see that in place, see a proactive rollout. I would urge everybody in this call, if you are considering mental health or thinking about what you do, take a deep dive into what you do. Invest time, invest effort, invest experience into it, and you really will see the benefit of it. But my only concluding message, I guess, is firstly, we are all responsible for mental health, whatever level of the supply chain we are. And secondly, mental health equals safer shipping. And if we invest in it and dedicate our experience to it, we can make a real change in this area.
Christian, thank you. And questions.
I think there's an echo on your line, Kuba.
I can't help that. It was Christian probably who was unmuted, and that's why it created. Now Christian is muted, so I think I'm okay. Thank you. There will be a link provided in our action points for Christian, obviously, contact and everything. I'm delighted to report that we have run some help with Christian during the Christmas, and that was very well received. I can see, Saulak, you would like to ask a question. Unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Yeah, a very good presentation by Mr. Christian. I have just one question. In the first slide, there is a return on investment of 4 to 7%, I believe. And what kind of data is it built on?
Yeah, very good question. So there are lots of reports out there. This was taken from a report by Deloitte, McKinsey, all the big consulting firms. Now, obviously, it varies depending on industry, but we're definitely seeing that. As I said, the amount of small incidents which are saved is significant. We work closely with insurers and other people who ultimately bear the cost of these small incidents, and they're reporting a very positive uptick in this. I think it's important as well that measuring the benefit is something which can be done by lots of different metrics. There's a financial element, obviously, but there's also a human element. And especially with the younger generation coming through, they are looking for partners or employers who make a positive contribution towards their health and their well-being. There's also, as I mentioned, the proactivity point. So when you have a culture of safety, you have people who optimize their working. And so some owners are saying, look, you have people who work better, they work more efficiently, they're more engaged, they put forward ideas, and that reduces the amount of, I guess, first of all, absenteeism, where people take time off work, or even presenteeism, where people will work, but not as fully and as efficiently as they can. We're seeing a lot of this. It will take some time for the data to come through, but from what we're seeing, we're realizing this, and this is, I guess, the important point to make, that mental health, when done properly, when done rigorously, brings so many benefits. It's not a cost center. It can be something bigger than that. It can be a real positive influence on any organization, and ultimately it creates safety.
Kuba, can I just say something here, because I think I should, in the interests of our general principles that we discussed earlier, I have to declare an interest here, a personal interest for which I make no excuses. The genesis of mental health support solutions, although a far cry from my initial ideas, came from me. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we had a suicide on board one of our vessels, which was tragic, as always is the case. And my partner, who is a psychologist, I was discussing this with her and saying how tragic it is. This was before COVID. How tragic it is that these seafarers don't have anyone to reach out to, particularly in the with the increased connectivity, where they go to their rooms, they go straight onto their computers and are communicating with home. They don't have that camaraderie that previously existed. Why can't we put together something for the maritime space? And from that idea grew mental health. I have no interest, or Columbia has no interest, except that Columbia was the very first client, which we were very proud and are very proud to be. Of course, it's now the industry leader and has gone on to much bigger and better things. But I'm immensely proud that we subscribe to this service. If you go on board our vessels, the first number that they will show you is the mental health helpline, and the crew really appreciate having this support and the various poster campaigns and videos that are produced. The important thing for us was that it was professional, because although experience, and I know from the army, and I put my hand up, in my time, I've also been a benefactor of mental health support. The important thing is that the advice is professional. You can't give experience advice, because you can actually sometimes do more damage than you're trying to avoid. But here it has to be professional, it has to be affordable, and it has to be people focused. And credit to you, Christian. You've taken my original idea and taken it to much higher and loftier places than I ever intended. But it's a great service, and we're very proud to be Columbia is very proud to be a client of yours.
Thank you, Mark. Being very aware of last 2 minutes and guillotine term, I would like to wrap up everything and say thank you very much for joining us today. These meetings will only go from strength to strength with your feedback. Therefore, you will see the action points sometime today. Please come back with the items you would like us to discuss in next meetings. I would suggest, seeing how logistically it works, then we meet next time 2 weeks from now. However, I'm flexible. If there is a demand to meet every week, then I will pull my socks up and I'll try to make it available. But at the moment, because of the agenda points and everything, they come usually 2-3 days. That means Friday, and that means only 3 days before next meeting. So I would suggest, realistically, we put that bar at the moment for 2 weekly meetings, and I will be circulating invites and everything, and I will make sure that this recording is available. With that said, and 25 seconds to go, Mark, your last 2 seconds, please, to say goodbye.
Goodbye to everybody. Thank you for participating. Hopefully you found it useful and the format useful. Please, can we have your feedback on this standard? It's really important. And if you follow the general principle route, then of course any feedback is always very welcome. And I leave it to Kuba to solicit ideas as to how we form a committee to put those general principles for that standard together. Thank you.
Thank you all. Goodbye. It was great to see you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Christian, very well done, by the way. Very well done, sir. Hi, Sergey.